Hello again, EnderSword here, this time with a bronze and silver level game. We're going to be focusing on the Protoss player who is our bronze player, Snorf. He's been doing fairly well in bronze recently and was asking on TeamLiquid.net what things he could focus on in order to improve his game going forward. So I'm going to go through this one a little bit more meticulously than I have been doing lately, trying to point out kind of every little thing that goes wrong, because it's often just those mechanics, missing time here, not building out of everything that's going to make a big difference in the game. So the three things that I'm going to be focusing on most are overall macro, scouting information, making sure that you're aware what your opponent is doing, and 3, making sure that you don't supply block yourself constantly all the time for no good reason, as is going to be an issue in this game. So his opponent for today is going to be the silver level Terran player GreatHorde up here in the top left hand corner. But we will be focusing on the Protoss today. First things first, at 143 here, there's no probes building out of the Nexus as he goes to throw down a gateway. And even when he does get enough money to be doing both, again, no probes are constructed out of here. For about 25 seconds or so, he should start again right about now. And he's got the probes going again. You're missing at least 1.5 probes there. It's way too early in the game to be getting distracted to a point of missing that type of thing. It does make a very large difference, but I know that his attention was actually focused on his scouting probe over here, which he felt was chased out of the Terran base. Another point in terms of scouting, don't just go take a peek and then come back home. You want to be keeping that scouting probe around, either go around annoying the player or keep them in the vicinity so that you can go back and take another look later. Now the gateway is done and the cybernetics core is going as well, but nothing is being produced out of the gateway. You do want to be making sure that you're starting to get a unit out, or at least have some compelling reason why you're not doing this. Given that we scouted that there was a 2 barracks opening, that is usually pretty typical of some form of early little Terran poke or little bit of aggression. So having absolutely no unit started back home until much later, and it wasn't his intention to just skip the Zealot and go straight to a Stalker or anything. He does get the Zealot, but just a little late, so we do want to be keeping track of that. He also missed out on another probe on the Nexus while that was all going as well. At 420, the Zealot comes out here, and again, we've got that gateway not being used again. This gateway is now being built. Both are done, and he's got 2 more on the way, but these ones aren't even being used. So before you go adding extra production to what you're trying to do, make sure that you're actually using the production that you have available for yourself, so that you are actually efficiently pumping things out. And it's not really a lack of money that's preventing him from making units here. He could be affording more than he is currently making, but he's just opting instead to increase the production, and I think just forgetting that these are there and available all the time. It's a little late in the game here not to have the other gas. Despite the fact that he's going 4 gateways, this isn't really a 4-gate all-in or anything, so he should be looking at getting that other gas probably a bit sooner than this, unless this was actually intended to be an all-in. But if it was, then you would tend to have a proxy pylon up here. You would have done a better job scouting what your opponent's doing. There would have been a little quicker action, more of an effort to get a maximum army out, but even after these warp gates are done, he doesn't immediately warp in with full usage of the gateways, so this isn't meant as an aggressive action. The gas goes down there, but he is a little slow in getting the probes over to the area. You do want to be filling that up as soon as you get it going. The gas is one of the capping factors right now. He's not able to produce as many stalkers or get any sentries out due to not having enough gas, and especially where he's going to be making this observer right away. It's just sucking the gas dry, so it's limiting him to only zealots right now. But on top of everything, of course, he is supply blocked at the moment. We have the capacity to build 4 more units out of the gateways or warp gates now, but just don't have the actual supply room. So you know that these things are coming online, and you're going to start to be using your supply a lot quicker. So be throwing down more than 1 pylon at a time. There's a point that you have to start putting down 2 or 3, or be constantly making them, so that you're not actually supply blocking yourself. But instead, he goes and adds 3 more gateways to his infrastructure. We currently don't really even have the economy to support the 4 gateways plus a robotics facility, plus do whatever upgrading he's looking to do here. So throwing down the extra gateways at this point is a little excessive, and it's not something that you need to be doing when you're not currently even using everything you have. On the Nexus, the chrono is full. We're at 100, but nothing is even really going. He should be making probes out of here. He should be making more units out of these gateways. None of them are being used at the moment, despite the fact that he's got 7 of them. The robotics facility isn't doing anything, and he's just going for an expansion. So a lot of this infrastructure is currently just kind of useless. And we're not expanding our actual probe production, despite the fact that we are going to be expanding here. So right at the time that you would definitely want a lot more probes coming out, you do generally want them coming out just constantly anyway, especially if you've got the money. He's just not making these. The Dark Shrine goes down here, and I would again question the actual location of this. Usually a Dark Shrine is something that you want to be hiding a little bit, maybe not going way out of your way to hide it, but there's no reason that it couldn't be down here or in a place that's not going to be just accidentally scanned or looked at. This is in such an obvious location that a tiny poke up the ramp, a scan in exactly where he knows the production facilities are, would easily catch this, so it doesn't make sense to really put it right in the middle of everything. You want to try and catch them by surprise, and that's not going to happen there. Behind the mineral line, we've got a little bit of a cannon-gasm going on. He's throwing down 4 photon cannons, despite the fact that this observer has taken a look around the Terran base and sees that there's no starport, there's nothing in the air, there's nothing that's going to indicate that either a drop is on its way or even could be on its way within the next 2 or 3 minutes. So going for 4 cannons behind the mineral line is quite a bit excessive at this point, particularly when we don't even have vision on this part of our own base. So if a drop were to come in, yes, if it came in from right behind, then I guess we're very, very well defended, but he could easily just drop in this shaded area and come take the Nexus out immediately, and you wouldn't have any idea. But we also know that there isn't a drop on the way, that there's no facilities down, and we know that because the observer's been in the base. So don't overreact to something out of fear of things that just aren't actually happening. The Dark Shrine is up. He's a little slow to get some of the Dark Templars going. And he does opt to go for a Warp Prism as well. This is no doubt an attempt to get the Dark Templars more quickly into place. However, you generally want to time those a little better as well. You'd want the Warp Prism made and en route to where it's going to go just as the Dark Shrine is done. If you're just waiting this extra period of time, you're just giving the other player a lot more time to prepare for this, a lot more time to detect what you're doing. It's just slowing your attack down by, in this case, 2 or 3 minutes. to not already have that where it's going to go. The other issue with this is the warp prism is now going to very sneakily go to the Terran base directly over a Xel'Naga watchtower. If you're going to take that sort of route, make sure that you're sending units out to get control of these towers. You should have control of them to begin with, but you should at least, at a minimum, know that your opponent doesn't have control of them, or else your kind of sneaky attack is absolutely destroyed to begin with the moment you go near one of those. You don't know that he's not going to have a single Marine or SCV there that's going to see everything coming and just completely block you out. So the DTs do end up getting dropped in to a place that they could have just walked to anyway. So there was no need actually to really get and wait for the warp prism to come in. The attack does get launched. He notices this isn't an orbital. The missile turrets are in place. They only got there about 10 or 15 seconds ago. So had he hurried that attack along a little earlier, that would have been absolutely undefended. A scan goes down here, but and then he pulls his DTs back. But given that this isn't an orbital, and there was only one orbital up here, and it just blew its scan, those DTs basically could have ended the game right there. Given the location of this missile turret, he could have taken out or at least forced the lift of the command center right at that time. There'd be no way that he couldn't have stopped him from getting into this area and just controlling this side. That doesn't give him enough vision to get over there. And he didn't actually have to be pulling those out at the time that he did. So that is a bit of a shame. The game could have just been over outright right there, but instead he gave him time to put up more missile turrets in the area and defend that from the DT attack, which he wasn't really prepared for at all. The other thing to note here at this point in the game, now that you're really getting a good sense of what's in the Terran army and what's there, we've got this handful of about 8 units or so that comprise the entire Terran army that has been mobilized against you. This is up in the main base and isn't really deployed against you. We've got our warp prism in place so we can do warp-ins, and we've got an army the size of which would completely destroy what the Terran has currently fielded. So it also presents an opportunity to just go and wipe the guy out immediately by coming around this route and just taking things out. Avoid all this cannon fire and siege tank fire and just go around the side and again take this base out. So another kind of missed opportunity there where he just kind of wanted to be sneaky but ignored the fact that your actual conventional army is just way bigger than what the Terran has at the moment. There's no reason to hesitate. Again, we get a lot of gateways being added on to our infrastructure and production here, but we're not getting use out of the ones that already exist, and a lot of that is due to constant supply blocking and just not actually making enough things and kind of forgetting that they're there and missing warp cycles. This base is mined out. Those should definitely be on their way over to the new base. If they left right there, they'd kind of get there right on time. It's good that he's at least got the presence of mind to still be taking a third, even though he's got a decent sense that the Terran is pinned in. Definitely you want to continue your scouting. If we look at what Snorf is aware of at the moment, he's got this part obviously fairly well protected with the DTs. He's going to know that there's no base going up there, but we don't really know anything about what's going on this side of the map. It would have been quite easy for him to have dropped a command center here and float it down to either of these locations. So while we're playing a little bit of a you can't really move out, you're kind of contained by these DTs on the map type of play, there's nothing really preventing him from expanding to these 2 locations at the moment, and you should at least be keeping an eye on those locations to make sure that that the person isn't actually doing that. Back home, just checking in on the state of the army. The forge went down quite a while ago, but no upgrades have ever been started on that. We do have blink and the charge lots, but everything is still at 000, whereas the Terran army is now at 1-1 on his infantry and still 0-0 on the mech that he's got going. He's adding on the starports now, so quickly he could be getting healing out, could be getting banshees out, things like that. He's opting for the incredibly late cloak banshee play, which you don't see usually at 21 minutes into the game, but that's always an interesting choice. If both players had been keeping up with their upgrades, there's really no reason that they wouldn't just be 3-3 or so by now. So both players are really behind, but the Protoss just hasn't made any improvement to his forces in terms of just weapons and armor, whereas the Terran at least has his stim, his shields, his attack, and his armor all going, so that's going to make that army a lot better, particularly in this type of tight situation. He's got pretty good positioning with these tanks. His army's in a point that's going to be hard to get a lot of surface area with the zealots and so on. So he's in a reasonably well-turtled position. He does opt to come take a look to see if he can expand up here, and the DT's getting his way. I don't know why he didn't just immediately scan in that location. All the DTs could have been taken out at that point. The army finally does kind of move up into position, and we are taking a fourth. At this point, Protoss army is definitely maxed out, but the composition isn't that great, and this engagement is probably the worst possible angle and positioning that he could have chosen. You've got all the zealots going through one tight area, and if it wasn't for the storms that were going on there and just complete lack of healing by the Terran player, if he had had a few medevacs in place to kind of counteract some of that storming, these tanks are just absolutely raining fire down on that Protoss army. And if the Terran had played a little better with his infantry, had a few medevacs in place, you can see that that overwhelming force almost got completely taken out. There's only about 3 or 4 units left from the original attack, and everything else was a reinforcement round of warpings. So, and even then, if the Terran had been a little more proactive getting his own reinforcements back down into this high ground area, we would have had trouble. There wasn't any spotting for the high ground, so when you do make an attack like that, and you know, first of all, if you know something's on a high ground, you want to have something that's able to see that. Colossus are really good for that, since they're just kind of part of a Deathball army anyway, but you at least want an observer or something that can see in that area, and you also want to question whether or not that's the angle of attack you want to be going for in the first place. And coming right down this hallway of death just didn't make a lot of sense when we know that this area over here is a little clearer, and you get away from that sort of high ground thing. The Protoss obviously was able to just completely roll in here, but we can see that the actual resources lost are a lot closer than they should have been. The Protoss should have just been able to come in with that army, which was almost twice the size, and just roll over the Terran completely, but instead did actually take a big risk by coming through the middle like that, and only due to a few clutch storms hitting some good clumps of units and the complete lack of medevac healing did that work out so great. So overall in the game here, just to recap, probably too much production for the level of economy that we had. It is good to often err on the side of having more gateways than you need, because you can always make that big warp in, but if you're just not coming anywhere close to getting the use out of the gateways that you currently have, like when you've got 7 and you're only making 3 units per cycle or anything, you want to be focusing more on making sure that you're getting out the units and using the current things that you currently have before just going ahead and adding this many of them on. Overall good expanding. A little slow on everything, of course. The natural could have come down quicker. The third could have come down quicker. You do really want to be running on 3 bases, not just getting 3 bases. If your main has mined out by the time you've got your third up, you're never really on 3 bases. You're always just on 2. And you've just mined out the previous one. So the idea is to be ramping up your economy, not to just maintain it at 1 base, 2 bases throughout the whole game. So these could be a lot quicker, particularly given some of the scouting we had for the Terran, that there wasn't really anything aggressive that was going to come out of there. There wasn't a lot of danger. Economically could have been dealt with a little better. And overall, just supply blocking became a huge issue. With this much production, he was constantly behind in pylons. That gateways were going down 4 or 5 at a time, but pylons were still kind of coming down 1 or 2 at a time, and you want to coordinate that a lot better. A lot of this game is about timing and making sure that things sync up, so when you know you're going to have a ramp in production like that, you want to make sure that you've got the ramp up in supply in time to accommodate some of that production. Similarly, when the DT shrine was done, you're usually trying to hit some sort of timing there to catch your opponent off guard. But by having the dark shrine done, and then you start a warp prism, and then the warp prism waits around for a few DTs to be built because you didn't have enough gas or didn't have enough supply, and then the warp prism wanders across the map, and then kind of stops there and waits for a while, things like that, you're just adding 2, 3, 4 minutes onto everything you're doing. Whereas if the DTs had hit the moment that the Dark Shrine was done, even though this Dark Shrine was actually quite late to begin with, if the DTs had hit at the time that that was done, there was actually no detection up in this area whatsoever, and he would have had to rely on 1 scan to kill about 4 DTs off, which just wasn't going to happen with the composition he had. You could always just run away and come back in. So it is the timing that makes a big difference in the game. So those would be the things that I would focus on most. Overall, clearly just still macroing enough to beat another Bronze or Silver League player, but those are definitely the areas that you can improve on the most. So thanks for listening, and I hope that was